And through meditation, I help them access their loved ones, people who are no longer on the planet. Based on my past 20 years of studying, people report the same thing, which is we exist prior to incarnation, before we are born. We have conscious energy. It's between 20 and 40%. The rest of our conscious energy is always off stage. These are interviews with people who are seeing Jesus, and he's saying things like, the Bible is metaphor. It's not supposed to be taken as law. What's the data say? And the data says people can recall previous lifetimes. In my case, there have been 3 places on the planet where the plane landed and I felt like I was home. And it wasn't until years later that I had that past life memory of being a priest in Kerala and experiencing what that was like. What a beautiful place India is. Did you plan it for this play? Is the reason you're in love with that person because you did a play with them before? Maybe you recognize them.
So welcome to Sangam Talks, and Mr. Richard Martini we have with us today, and thank you so much for take up your time to join us on Sangam Talks.
I'm so honored to be here once again in India. I've had the great fortune of my life to have been to India many times. I have gone from Kerala all the way up to Kashmir and all the way to Mount Kailash. So I've had many, many trips to India. It started back in 1995. I was, the first time was with Robert Thurman. Robert Thurman, Uma's father, who used to be a Buddhist monk. He was teaching a class in Tibetan philosophy at Columbia University. And I decided I was filming a talk show in New York City with my friend Charles Grodin. And I decided I would audit his class in philosophy. So he let me in. And then at some point he said, well, I'm going to Ladakh with my wife, and we have an extra space on the trip. And so I flew to Ladakh, and then I decided I would stop in Delhi. And I'm going to tell you now a story that only you would appreciate.
Sure.
Because actually, I'm sorry, I decided I was going to stop in Mumbai on the way back, on the way out. I flew into Delhi. We flew up to Dak, and then we came back. And I decided I was going to go to Mumbai, fly out of Mumbai back to the States. And while I was there, I stopped to visit a friend of mine who ran this office for Columbia Motion Pictures in Mumbai. And he was an employee of a close friend of mine. And so my friend, Duncan Clark, said, call this fellow up. And, you know, he'll give you a tour of Mumbai. I said, oh, that's great. So I go to dinner with this fellow, whose name is right on the edge of my mind. And he says to me, Richard, why are you in Mumbai? I said, well, when I went to film school at USC, University of Southern California, here in Los Angeles, there was a very beautiful young woman who was from Mumbai, and we became friends. And I used to write letters to her. And he said, what's her name? And I said, her name was Manjula. He said, you know, there's 1 billion people in India, and there's many Manjulas in Mumbai. And I said, well, her last name was Nanavati. And he said, and someone at the table said, oh, I know a Manjula who went to USC. Why don't I call her? And I thought, oh, wouldn't that be funny? So he picks up the phone, he dials her, and he hands me the phone. There she was. I found her. And so we went and became friends again and hung out. And some years later, I was given the opportunity to write a movie that took place in Bollywood. It was called My Bollywood Bride. Changed the title to Faraway Indian Bride, but it was called My Bollywood Bride, and it was based on this true story. It was based on the fact that I had met Manjula at USC and then lost touch with her, and then I came all the way to India to find her by accident. And so that was the story. It's a little bit about kismet, fate. whether you're going to meet
Yes.
someone again in your life. But since then, I made a film, a digital film called Camera Dogma 15, part of the Dogma film movement, and I was invited for the digital talkies by Schaefer Kapoor, who had me fly out there. This was like in 2000, I think it was 90. I might be 96, might be 2000. Anyway, he had me come out and present my film in Delhi. And so I came to Delhi and I got to, see how beautiful Delhi is. And I got to see the 7 different Delhis. And I went out to the Taj Mahal. And I'll just tell you, when I landed at the airport, I got on a taxi and I drove into Chandni Chowk. And I got out of the cab and there was the Red Fort, and there was a sadhu standing in the street corner on one foot and looking at me and looking at like, welcome. And here I am in Los Angeles, and 24 hours I'm there in Chandni Chowk, and an elephant came up to me. There was a parade, a Jain parade, and the elephant saw me taking pictures, and he walked right up to me and knelt down and said, come. The mahout was on top of the elephant and said, come. So that was my reintroduction to India. And I know that your podcast talks about things of the spirit and spiritual things. And I just want to say, before we
Those
get into
things you are interested in, especially
I'm very interested. But there's probably
past life regressions, afterlife.
That's right. But I will tell you that when I did a past life regression, I've done 6. And it was the second one that I did. It was here in Los Angeles. The first one I did while I was making a film called Flipside, which is a book. Was published in India as well, and it was also...
Yes, I am about to mention for our Indian friends who don't know that we are having with us Mr. Martini, who is an award-winning movie director. He's a writer, and he's kind of a philosopher also when it comes to the past life regression thing and those, quite niche topics. And the flip side book, yes, that's...
Yes.
I haven't got the opportunity to read it properly though.
Okay,
but we can discuss on it. And the documentary movie you made kind of on that topic.
Yeah. And I will tell you that a fella, his name right on the edge of my tongue, came out to visit me from India, and he was interested in he'd been reading some of my work. And so we met up and had a conversation, and he asked if he could publish Flipside in India. So the copies that are in bookstores, as opposed to buying it online, are through his company. And he's a writer in Delhi, and he writes a religion column for one of the big newspapers. But I was just going to say, what's fascinating, so I did my second past life regression. I've done 6 myself. I've filmed over 200, accessing, what people remember about previous lifetimes. But in my second session, I had a very profound memory of being a priest in Kerala. And I had been to Kerala. I went to visit Kerala in one of these trips. I was invited. I went to the Arjatpuram festival in Kerala. I was filming it for a New Horizons, Far Horizons tour company out of Delhi. My friend Sanjay Basu runs that. And so he invited me and said, why don't you come and, you can film some, he might be at the Digital Talkies Festival. He said, why don't you film, a commercial for my company? And so we went to Kerala. They have a boat, that goes through all the, and so I got to see what Kerala was like. And I met the people, and I was at this, the Arjatpuram festival where they have 100 elephants dressed in gold, charging across the plain at dawn. I mean, it's very dramatic. And some of that footage that I shot is online under my name. You can find it at Hacking the Afterlife podcast. There's footage from that trip to Kerala. Anyway, what's the point? The point is, while I did my second past life regression, I saw myself as a Brahmin priest in Kerala, a follower, a devotee of Shiva. Now, I'm not that familiar. I'm not that familiar with the stripes that go across, but I was describing, the wave that, and I talked about the Ayurvedic makeup that you use every day, to put that thing on, and then I talked about the temple that I was over.
That is that tripund. That's for mainly for the servist. See, right?
Okay, and I was aware of the temple that I was overseeing, taking care of, and then I had in my vision I could see myself going into the holy of holies inside the temple, where Westerners don't go, but where the priests can go. And as I opened up the cabinet, I saw inside a stone from Kailash. And I said that aloud. I said, "Oh my gosh, I've got a piece of Kailash here." Now, how did I know that it was Kailash? It's because then I went to Kailash. I was in Kailash, and I did a trip around Kailash. But I mean, how would I look at a stone and realize, oh, that stone came from Mount Kailash? See? But when you're doing a hypnotherapy session, and by the
You
way,
mean to say that nobody told you, you realized it by yourself?
no, well, put it this way. When you do a hypnotherapy session, okay, it's 4 to 6 hours long if you do it with a Michael Newton Institute trained hypnotherapist. And like I
Correct.
say,
I
you're
have to
aware.
ask you about that as well.
Yeah.
That
And I've done 6 sessions myself, 4 to 6 hours. I filmed them, but I've also filmed 200 with other people. And each time I learn new information. In the past 5 years, well, about 10 years ago, a medium reached out to me who works with law enforcement, FBI, LAPD, NYPD, Jennifer Schaefer. She reached out to me and said, "I read your book, Flipside. I'm very interested. We don't live far apart. Why don't we have lunch?" And that was about 11 years ago. And since then, every week, we get together and talk to people off planet. She's like a cell phone to the afterlife. And we do a podcast because when the pandemic hit, we couldn't meet up for lunch. I couldn't film her. So we just went online. If you go to Hacking the Afterlife on YouTube or iTunes, you'll see us talking to people who used to be on the planet who no longer are. And we have a friend on the other side who helps
off
us.
planet, out of this world. I mean, within this universe, or
Offstage.
you're talking about some other dimension.
Well, I'm talking about people who are alive. Our wording would be alive and dead.
I mean,
but they
is there another planet or something within our
No, it's a dimensional thing.
dimension?
But I just want to because when you combine the research, so I've been combining the research, which is University of Virginia has been doing consciousness studies for 40 years. And the data shows that consciousness is not confined to the brain. There's a book by Dr. Tucker called Before, which has 2,500 historically accurate reincarnation cases, from the science point of view. Dr. Grayson's book After is 4 decades of near-death experiences, talking about the filters on that block awareness. And then Dr. Kelly's work, he's an award-winning scientist, and he's done these books, Consciousness Unbound, hundreds of peer-reviewed studies that show consciousness is not confined to the brain. Other work I worked with was Dr. Helen Wamba, who was a clinical psychologist and a hypnotherapist. One was Dr. Brian Weiss, Many Lies, Many Masters. He's done 4,000 cases. Wamba had done like 2,750 cases. But Michael Newton is the person I interviewed for the book Flipside. Hypnotherapist, he had done 7,000 cases, reports before he first published. So the question is, obviously, if you want to collect data about the afterlife, it has to be consistent and reproducible to become data. And I show that Helen Wamba's work, which was 10 years before Michael Newton, is identical to his work in her clinical case studies, which is people talking to people who can recall the life selection process of how they incarnated, that journey. And you can ask people what the process, and of course I'm working with a medium, right? And then the third modality I use is meditation, guided meditation. And what I do with people, and I do it with people from all over the world, also in India and also in Australia, where I spend a couple of hours, 2 hours with them on Zoom, and through meditation, I help them access their loved ones, people who are no longer on the planet. So here's what I want to tell you, which is based on the research, okay, based on my past 20 years of studying. People report the same thing, which is we exist prior to incarnation, before we are born. A little bit like the Pixar movie Soul, if you ever get a chance to see that. But we choose who we're going to be, along with the help of our parents, and then we have conscious energy, a soul. But we only bring a percentage of that energy to the lifetime. That's interesting. It's between 20 and 40%. The rest of our conscious energy is always off stage. And so we choose who we're going to be, and it's part of like a university, where each class you learn more things until you graduate. And people report the same things, which is basically, my mother, my father, I've known them in previous lifetime. And the reason we come together is because we like to work together. We're teammates. You don't have to be with your family. You can choose to be with someone else. But the idea is that you can access this information using meditation. You can do it with a medium. Like I say, Jennifer Schaefer and I work together. She's like having a cell phone. So I can say to someone literally, what's it like for you over on the other side? And my friend Luana Anders, who passed away in my arms, I wrote the book about her. And she started visiting me. And that's why I searched for Robert Thurman, because I knew he was a Buddhist. She was a Buddhist. I thought, well, maybe he might know why it is she's visiting me. That's why I studied Buddhism. Turned out that wasn't necessarily the reason. She becomes key to my story about how do I ask people. So she brings people forward for us to talk to. You see what I'm saying? We do a podcast. We did one yesterday. She brings people forward who passed away. Robert Duvall, for example, was somebody we interviewed yesterday. I knew Robert Duvall, the actor. I had lunch with him. And he came forward and talked to us about what it was like when he crossed over, who was there to greet him, who he was hanging out with. And the point is that we can do that with anyone. And so in the past 10 years, I've interviewed, and this will be unusual for your audience to hear, but I've interviewed Ma Durga, I've interviewed Yogananda, I've interviewed Krishna, Shiva, I've interviewed Buddha. And I know that Buddhists will say that's not possible, or other people will tell me that's not possible.
Well,
But,
Mr. Martini,
yes.
From the Hindu point of view, a Hindu who is not that much into the metaphysics, but someone like me who I think I can confident enough to say that I am informed enough. So the Bhagavans you referred, Bhagavan Shiva, Bhagavan Krishna, well, they are not that kind of a particular soul, but Buddha maybe, because he
hold on, hang on a second. I understand the difference between the philosophy of Hinduism and me talking to someone and saying, what do you see?
And even the individuals. I mean, the Atman.
Well, wait, hold on.
Metaphysics about
Let me give you an example. So last year I was at Contact in the Desert. This is a conference out here, and I was doing these guided meditations with a woman her family's from India, but she lives in Canada. She came to my table and we talked. And she said, I'd like to do a little bit of what you do, the guided meditation. Very simple. Picture yourself in a boat on a river. It's where I begin in the meditation. And in a few moments, she said, Jesus is here. And I said, how do you know it's him? Is he wearing a name tag? She said, no, I don't know how I know it's him, but it's him. I said, are you a follower? She said, no, I'm not. I said, all right, well, then let's just ask him some questions. You see? I don't judge who she is. I'm asking the person she's seeing questions. I ask him the same questions. It actually became a book called The Greatest Story Never Told, as told by Jesus and those who knew him.
Okay.
The point is, these are interviews with people who are seeing Jesus, And he's saying things like, he says things like the Bible is metaphor. It's not supposed to be taken as law. He says all religions point to the same garden. He says you don't have to follow me, but you can walk beside me as we walk each other home. When someone says they're seeing an 8-armed teacher her skin is almost dark blue, I know who that is because I've interviewed this woman enough times. She's a teacher on the other side. And I ask her, how do people refer to you on earth? And she's the one who told me Ma Durga is the name that people call me. But she's not from that. And the same goes with people like Krishna, like Shiva, especially when someone shows up with blue skin. And so you have to ask them, why is your skin blue? Can you tell me that? You see? So when Yogananda showed up, and of course I've read his book, and I live not far from where his center is here in Los Angeles, where some of Gandhi's ashes are here in Los Angeles. So I read his book, The Life of a Yogi, Autobiography of a Yogi. And so I was familiar. So now I'm not seeing him. I don't see Yogananda, but the person I'm talking to, Jennifer Schaefer, she sees him. She doesn't know who he is. She describes how he's dressed, what his the skin looks like. And I know that's looks like him. And I ask him questions very simply. I don't ask him dialectical questions about the philosophy. I say, who greeted you when you crossed over? Who are you surprised to see? Who are you spending time with now? Who are you hanging out with? Then I asked if I could speak to his teacher, who was a famous person as well, because in his book, Autobiography of a Yogi, he describes coming home from a lecture, I think it was in Delhi, and when he got to the hotel, he opened the door and his teacher, who had passed away, was sitting on his bed. And so I wanted to know from the teacher, how did you do that? What was the process? You see, and so the woman, the Jennifer, who's speaking, doesn't know anything about Yogananda.
Okay, that's what I'm. I may sound like a skeptic, but I'm just curious.
No, you should. I think it's very important. But what I'm trying to say is, when you're having a spiritual experience, you see your mother, your grandmother, your grandfather.
I mean, you are using Jennifer as a medium. And she can, brought down those souls which she have no idea about. That can
happen. Absolutely. So today, if you watch yesterday's podcast, which has Robert Duvall, the actor, she doesn't know who Robert Duvall is. She can't place him, but he's showing her the movie The Godfather. And she then asks, is he in The Godfather? And she's not aware of who that is. And we do that throughout. And I say people's first name. Do you have anything you want to say to Dusty? I said, Dusty. And she said, I'm seeing Dustin Hoffman. I said, well, yeah, that was his close friend. And that was his nickname for him. So I use the language of the person I'm talking to ask questions that I know what the answer is. Or I know that they know what I'm talking about. And she does not. And so now she's just one of many mediums I've worked with. I work with mediums who work with law enforcement because I know how good they are. But the point is, it's not one methodology. It's 3. So I use hypnotherapy for one. So let's say, for example, you wanted to speak to your grandfather. Bless his heart. Is he still on the planet?
No, sir.
Okay, so very good. What's his first name?
Which side of talking about?
Your choice. You pick one.
My maternal grandfather's name is Gangadhar Bhaumik.
Gangadhar. Okay,
and my paternal was Avatirna Sarkar.
Well, have you heard from either one of them?
No.
Okay, well, here's what I would do. This is my methodology, and it's very simple, and your audience can understand it. I want you to picture yourself in a boat on a river, like the Beatles song. Now tell me, what does the boat look like? What's it made out of?
Wooden.
Wood. Is it old or new?
It's kind of worn out.
It's kind of worn out, kind of old. Is it familiar? Have you been in this boat before?
Not necessarily. No, I don't think so.
No, but does it look
It's
familiar?
quite
Yeah,
a small boat.
okay. And where's the water? Where, are we in a river, a lake, an ocean, pond?
A very broad, but it's a river. It's
It's
definitely
a
a
river.
river.
Okay. So let's just allow ourselves to be there for this moment. Do you know where this river is? Does it look familiar to you? What comes to mind?
It comes to mind like the Ganges
The
near city
Ganges.
of.
Okay. Let's just allow. And again, this is our construct. So if I then say, let's go to the Brahmaputra, it's okay for you to shift. But right now, let's just
What
allow
a
that.
coincidence, Mr. Martini. I was about to tell you that I am thinking about Ganges where it meets the ocean. It's near Kolkata. But I am also imagining some, mountainside. So
Okay. All right.
Brahmaputra may be the good
Well,
choice.
I like to imagine that I can hear the same thing you're hearing, which is let's go to the Brahmaputra, which I've been on. Let's be in that place. But inside this boat, I don't want you to worry about going downstream. Just let's say it's tied up to the side of a dock. All right. And now I'm going to ask you, and your audience can choose anybody. They can choose a deity. They can choose somebody they care about. They can choose, like if they someone they say prayers to. Just invite them to come and sit across from you. You invite them to sit across from you, and the trick is, if you're going to say a prayer, wait for the response. Most people don't wait to hear a response. They just say the prayer. Oh, please help me, blah, blah, blah. But here's what I want you to do. Grandpa G or your father G. Is your grandfather's name begins with G, right?
Well, G is like in Hindi belt we use for our elders.
Okay.
And
So
where
let's.
I'm from, I don't use G that much.
Oh, no,
I'm
but
from
I don't know. No, but you said his name is Ganda something. Ganda
Gangadhar.
begins with a G.
Yes.
Okay.
G. Okay, you will
Yeah.
address the letter you are talking about.
Yes. So yeah, I
G.
wasn't saying GI. So, but let's invite. I can't say that word as well as you can. I don't want to mangle his name. Let's just call him Grandpa G. Yeah.
So
What's your mother's name?
Protima.
Brokima. So here's what I want you to do. Just and again, this is a construct that we're creating together. Okay. And I want you to invite Brokima to sit across from you. And now just see her in a happy state. And what is she wearing?
Sari. She always wears sari.
What color is it?
Yellow.
It's yellow. And is it a sari that you know, or is it one that she knows? Is it new?
Can't say. Maybe
I mean, it's
my.
not. It's not familiar. You would be able to say if you
No,
knew it,
it's kind of familiar, but can't
but
recall that.
you don't recall it. I'm just pointing out that's her sari that she is wearing.
Yes.
She chose it. It's not one you know. It's not coming from your mind. You would think you would just pick her the one she always wore, but you're not. It's fine. It's yellow. Please, it's saffron. Let's give it a correct name. And I want you in your mind's eye, probably a good idea to close your eyes, reach across the boat, close your eyes, reach across the boat and take hold of her hands and tell me, are they soft? Are they strong? Are they warm? Are they cold?
Kind of, I can't reach.
Just pretend you can. Just pretend you're holding her hand. You know what her hands feel like. But what do they feel like now? Are they soft? Are they hard? Are they warm? Are they cold?
It's soft.
Soft. Okay, very good. Very good. And I just want you to look at her eyes. I want you to thank her for being here. This is a game we're playing. Thank you for participating in your son's game. And I want to ask you a question. And I need her to nod, yes, shrug, I don't know, or shake her head no. Or she can put the word yes in your mind. Is it okay if I ask you a question, Brokima? Was that a yes? Was that a nod? That was kind of a nod.
Just staring.
All right, but tell Brokima if she wants to play this game, she has to respond. And, all communication is telepathic. In your dreams, you never see lips move. So I just want you to pretend this is a dream. Your mom is there. And I want her to say it's okay to ask her a question. Is it okay to ask you a question, Brokima?
Kind of smiling.
All right. So that's a smile is fine. Here's what I want to ask you, Brokima. How's your son doing?
Happy.
Okay, happy. Thank you. Is there ever a time or a moment you're not connected to him? No. You're shaking your head no. Okay. That's important to hear. There's never a time or a moment you're not connected. I'm going to ask you this, Brokima. Is everything going to be okay?
He's smiling.
Smiling. So let me ask you, Brokima, who greeted you when you crossed over? Put that in your son's mind. Was it a relative? Was it a religious person? Was it a friend? Was it an animal? Who greeted you? Only you would know the answer to that.
Mahadev on the back of Nandi ji.
Say again?
Mahadev on the back of Nandi ji.
Okay. And so was that a happy reunion?
Not happy, not sad.
Were you surprised to
normal.
see people on the other side, or is that something you expected?
Just a mountainside.
A mountainside. All right, please. I appreciate, you know what? She's skipping ahead. So this mountainside, what's the mountain? What's the name of this mountain? Put it in your son's mind. Is it in India? Is it above India?
No names.
No names, but you're showing him a mountain. Is it in the Himalayas? Is it in the Himalayas? Is this mountain? Yes, it is. Okay, so very good. Are we talking about Kailash, Brokima? Yes or no? Thumbs up?
Maybe.
Okay, maybe. Very good. Was that, and so that must have been kind of beautiful to see, I would think. Is that true? To be there. You lived in Delhi. I can't imagine you went up to the Kailash too often in your life.
Well, if you ask me, she born and brought up in Bengal, Kolkata.
Okay. So she didn't get a lot of chance to go into Kashmir or into...
I have this vision like it's a mountainside, valley, no trees, stream, a very thin stream, and sun is rising, the horizon is golden, pinkish.
Beautiful.
A very slow wind is blowing, and she seems very happy and smiling.
So I just want to ask Brokima, and really, the important thing is for her to show you when she has shown up. When have you shown up to see your son? And it might be a point that he's not aware of, but just show him. At some point in his life, you stop
Mr.
by.
Martini, I don't think I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, no, it's fine. But but you don't have to answer. I don't want you to answer. Okay, don't say aloud. I want her to put in your mind a time when she stopped by to see you. And can she do that? Can you see it? She stopped by because you were worried.
She was never on that boat.
No, not on the boat. I mean, in your life in Delhi, did she ever stop by while you were sleeping, or while you were having breakfast, or while you were, riding a bike, something?
I saw her in my dreams quite.
Okay, well, there you go. Okay, so tell me, what was that like? What did she do in that dream?
After she passed away, and after that, 1 year after that, I went to pilgrimage to Kedarji, Badriji.
Oh, beautiful.
And Kedarji is one of the Jyotirlinga of Mahadev Shiva.
And what did you see in the dream? How did she appear? Was she wearing this yellow sari, or was it another color?
It's kind of yellowish beige.
Beige, yeah, okay.
Articulate properly. Some red dots.
And
here.
did she say anything or do anything in the dream? Smiling?
Once I saw that the Nandi bull, I like to see it as Nandi bull. I can't be certain about it. And she's riding that.
Oh, that's great. Wow, how cool is that? And this is the kind of question you can ask her, you see, when you do this kind of meditation. no one knows you're doing it. You're having a meditation. You're taking 10 minutes of your day, and then this will pop up, and you'll go, "Oh, it's weird. I had this vision of seeing you, Mom, on this bowl. Was that accurate?" And she can laugh and go,
And I
"No."
am running with it, tucking on that tail.
Well, that's
Kind of,
the question for her.
but I
Is that
felt happy after I saw that dream.
and so here's what's fun about that. It's new information. It's not something you would imagine or pretend to imagine. I mean, who would think that? Nobody. But
It's weird,
she,
like the bull is running through that paddy field, and the harvest season is over, so it's not that full. And suddenly it went up to a hill, and it's like it's a Himalayan topmost peaks, and in a
beautiful.
few matter of seconds, it went there from that plain to the mountain
I
top.
think that's beautiful. And I just want to point out, sometimes things happen, and then later on we think of it, oh, it was a dream, I made it up. But then you really have to examine it. Why would I make up my mother riding a bull and me chasing after its tail? This happened just a few minutes ago. I was doing a guided meditation with a woman. We were doing it on Zoom. And, she was saying, because we did about 2 hours of the kind of conversation we just had. And you get to visit your council. You go to your Akashic library. You can meet people who are in a classroom, people who teach classes. I introduce people to students in classrooms. So in other words, you see a guide or a teacher, and then I ask, are you teaching any kind of a class over on the other side? And they say, sometimes they go, yeah, I am. And I say, can we see the class? And then this person sees a classroom, sometimes with a lot of chairs, sometimes with very few. And then I say, what's the class about? And the classes are always mind-bending kind of things about, interdimensional conversations or travel or creating matter from thought, mind-bending stuff. But then I say, can I talk to a student? And they're usually like us, a boy or girl that comes forward, and then they describe their life, who they are, where they're from, how old they are. My point is, the person I'm talking to has never seen anything like this in their life. They've never seen it in a movie, never read it in a book. They have no idea that there's classrooms in the afterlife. They have no idea that there's students in the classes in the afterlife. Some of them are currently incarnated on the planet because remember I was saying only a percentage of your conscious energy is here while you're alive. The other rest of it could be in a classroom. Sometimes there are people who have passed away, and they describe that. They'll talk about it. So the fascinating thing is what I'm doing is I'm surfing consciousness. I'm helping people to surf the consciousness of their journey. But at the same time, I'm just trying to point out they're saying things that are consistent because I hear it all the time, but they're saying things that they couldn't possibly conceptualize. It can't come from cryptomnesia or a dream or imaginary. And
Mr. Martini, let me snap out of it a bit. I mean, I am here for hosting you, and I am trying to concentrate, but it's really hard. So,
well, I'm sorry,
I
but
mean, I'm curious.
Do you know anybody who has said that they saw their mother riding a bull and they were chasing after a tail? Anybody?
I never shared it with anybody, and I felt a little bit uncomfortable sharing here because
please
it's
don't.
going.
You're not
Only shared with my older sister.
Well, I appreciate that, and I just want to say, listen, I created a forum on Quora, Quora. It's called Hacking the Afterlife, and the reason I did that, maybe we didn't meet there, but I've had 63 million views of people have come to this forum, and what I insist that they do is share data, share research, or share an experience that they've had. And sometimes they do it anonymously, like you could. But what I try to point out is it's a lot like skydiving. Everybody has an opinion about skydiving until they step out of the plane. And then it's an experience. And once you've had an experience like skydiving, you can't take it away from somebody. You can't say you didn't have that experience.
It's kind of amazing Let me share with you.
Please.
I have been in dreams where I've been gliding through this mountainside. It's a narrow valley, a narrow stream is going on, and there are trees of different colors,
Beautiful.
foliage, and I'm gliding through like Superman.
And so the question, and that's why I mention it, is because you'd be shocked how many people have identical dreams like that. And I think the reason is because we have filters that block this kind of awareness, because otherwise we wouldn't get through the day. Dogs can smell cancer, bees can see UV light, elephants
Cats
can
too,
see
right?
hate.
I mean,
Well,
maybe
cats
there's a
smell a lot.
hospital in
I
New
don't know.
York.
They haven't shown that yet, but cats, of course, see people that aren't on the planet. I was talking to a known skeptic on the other side, and I was saying, what's it like for a skeptic, an atheist, to realize there's an afterlife? He said, well, tell Ricky Gervais, the great skeptic, that he clearly must know there's an afterlife because he owns cats. Meaning cats see people that
Well,
aren't.
there is a research work. I want to know your opinion about it. And the cats, or maybe dogs also, they can sniff the hormonal shift in our bodies. And in the time of death, maybe there are certain kind of hormone which our body secrete, and
It's
they
a
can smell
little.
that.
Let me say this, my friend. It's even more mind bending. So I used to work for Robert Town, the screenwriter who wrote Chinatown. And so he was asking me what I was doing with my life. And I told him about this research. And he was like, oh, come on. And so I introduced him to Jennifer Schaefer. And we did a session live. It's in the film Hacking the Afterlife that's on Amazon Prime or Gaia. But we did this session live where I said, well, who would you like to talk to? And we talked about a friend, and he wasn't sure if it was real or not. He just couldn't get his mind around it. I said, well, let's talk to Hyra. And Robert went, oh, I don't know how you're going to do that. Hyra was the dog that I used to walk when I worked for Robert Town, his big Commodore Hungarian sheepdog. And so Jennifer the medium, listening to us, goes, well, I'm seeing like a giant rug, like a shag rug. And then he held up a photograph of his dog. And so then Jennifer, I asked the dog questions, just like I asked your mom questions. And the dog answered those questions. And I said, show us something that only Robert would know. And he said, I challenged a buffalo on the island of Catalina, Catalina is an island near LA, and they have a herd of buffalo over there. Robert had taken his dog to the island, and he saw his dog challenge this buffalo. In that moment, he realized the dog was saying something that only Robert could know. And from that point forward, for the rest of his life, he talked to Jennifer every week. And Hyra, the dog, shows up often on our podcast. Jennifer will say, Hyra is here. If you search Hira on our podcast, you'll find there's quite a few conversations. So I'm just going to skip ahead. I ask the animals, so what's the difference between us? Is there any difference between us? And what the animals have said consistently, and not only through Jennifer, different other mediums, the animals say, animals understand how incarnation works, but humans do not. They understand that they can choose to be a horse, choose to be a sheep, choose to be a dog or a cat, or choose. And they find us. We think we find them. We think that we go to the pound and adopt them. But their higher self is reminding us to get in the car and go over to the pound. And when we see them, we recognize that frequency. Like me seeing a rock and saying, oh, it's from Kailash. They recognize us. So the animals that you've had, or you have, or you're going to have, may very well be animals you've had in a previous lifetime. They find you. They're guardians. They help you. They understand purpose, and they have shorter lifetimes than we do. Let's say that most humans, except for sharks and tortoises and stuff like that, they understand the purpose of their journey. It's fascinating because the research shows that everything, you can talk to trees on the flip side, you can talk to any animal because it's all part of the sentience or the consciousness of everyone. And it's shocking. Listen, I've been doing this for 20 years. It's shocking when I'm talking to somebody I've never met before. They're doing a guided meditation and they're saying, okay, I'm here. Oh my gosh, it happened today. My cat Jake is here. I said, okay, I want to ask Jake a couple of questions. Okay. They had no idea that Jake could talk or communicate telepathically. And so I asked Jake a question. Who greeted you when you crossed over? Who are you hanging out with? Who are you surprised to see? Are you still connected to this person? And the answers are always the same. Yes, I'm still connected to them. I the other pets that she owns see me. She does not, but I'm there guarding her. So it's a mind-bending exercise, but I'm just saying if it was different, if people answered differently, I'd report that. But they don't.
Richard, one question I'm bound to ask you about, like
Please.
it may be a misinformed assumption from my side that you grow up as a Christian, and in Orthodox Christian values there is no concept of reincarnation like that we have in Hinduism, and
Absolutely.
also the concept of Atman, like the Atman is part of the Paramatma, the
Sure.
absolute consciousness, and we only feel the ego that this is me only after we have the guna,
Yeah.
the types we have.
Yeah. Well,
But
let me
how
just
you
say.
come to
Well, hold on. You've gone from the universal idea to a specific idea, a specific religious philosophical idea of Atman. Okay. And whether we call it Atman or whether we call it conscious energy, in Christianity, they call it a soul, which is a great word for food, soul food.
But there is one concept that one day before the judgment day,
hang on.
the
Again,
heaven will be full of souls.
That means
So
time out.
it seems
That
like
means-
every soul is individual souls.
So wait a
And they
second.
created and they never diminish.
Well, let me just say that again. I try to focus on the data. What is it that people say to me? And what I've learned is they say the consistent things, which is we choose our lifetimes. Now, when we make that choice, we can go to our guides. We all have guides. We all have teachers. We all have council members. Everyone has a group. The guides have guides. The council members have guides and council members. All of us, before we get on stage, we have to get permission from everybody. There's a guy in the movie Hacking the Afterlife who describes that process of being in a giant auditorium with thousands of people who agree. I'll play your goofy uncle. I'll play your mom. I'll play your dad. They agree. And we can say, no, not you. You're terrible. You're the worst actor I've ever worked with. I need somebody new in this role. Or we can go to somebody and say, please play my drunk uncle who is mean to me, because if a stranger plays it, I'll never learn anything. But because I know you and I helped you in your lifetime, you see, there's this other aspect. People ask about it. It's the idea of time, being outside of time, or that everything exists at the same time. And a guy said this to me, which was, consider all your lifetimes on a string. One goes after the other, otherwise you wouldn't learn anything. And so each lifetime continues. He said, but when you turn the string to your eye, you can see them all in 3 dimensions, like 3-dimensional chess, and how each one affected the other. So when you have this thing of feeling like the world is oppressing me, you can go to the life planning event and look around and see who was there and what
like
was the
the
story.
personalities of people, we sometimes say that this is an old soul or maybe a new, very
Yeah, well, of
naive
course, and
of souls.
but then you've
But
also
eventually, when they learn after lifetime, the aim is to reunite with the Paramatma. So that's the concept
think of it this way.
of
Think of Sorry, think of it this way: 25 years on Earth feels like 5 or 10 minutes off stage. So that's what people say. So in other words, 25 years or 100 years feels more like a half an hour to people off stage. And so you think about that. The council, and everyone has a council, and they're usually anywhere from 3 to 15 people. So you go and visit your council and you say, show me the story of how I chose to be me. And they'll do that. They'll show that to you. For their experience, then you go off and live your life. Let's say you live to 75 years. And then when you're done, you come back and there's a life review where you go back to your council and they all say, well, so how did you do? Or they show you things that you've done that you shouldn't have done. But for them, it feels like a half an hour went by. You were just here pitching your story. Half hour goes by for them, and now you're back. And they go, well, you said that you would conquer alcoholism, and you didn't do so well. And the person might say, well, you know what? Alcohol is different than it used to be. I mean, I thought I was going to, do the same thing I did before, but, the drugs are much worse. I mean, it's a different experience. So what people do is report, listen, we're all on stage. We choose to be on stage. When the play is over, when the Leela finishes, we drop the props and costumes and go home, off stage, where our friends are there, and we can fly at the speed of thought. We can go visit other dimensions. We can visit with any religious leader ever. We can visit any friend, any artist ever. We can play instruments. We can play sports. People talk about stadiums of people getting together to enjoy a sporting event. You can create crystal cities. You can create objects. In fact, one guy said, there's so much to do over here. It's only when we get really bored that we decide to reincarnate. And he was joking, but he was also saying, there are certain things on Earth that are tactile, that you can't create mentally, like the touch of a child's hand, the wind in your hair at the ocean, the taste of pizza, a cappuccino, a chai that's the best chai you've ever had. Not easy to create over there. So you do come back to experience these things and go through the journey. It's just
So
that.
that makes sense. I was actually about to ask you that have you ever considered like Miss Jennifer, that medium?
Yeah,
So
sure.
is there a possibility that some benevolent kind of spirit came through her and that entity is projecting that benevolence
Well, put
in
it
that
this way.
form, or maybe sometimes is it possible some non-benevolent entity?
Non-benevolent. I like that. Very good. But let me just say this. In terms of the data and the research and, the people that I've interviewed and the thousands of cases I've examined, the non-benevolent people are here on the planet. That evil is a
Yes.
construct. And like Gandhi said, the only devils I've met are in the hearts of men. Off planet or off stage, it just isn't reported. That people don't, and so sometimes people do see something they don't understand. They might consider it a demon. My book, Architecture of the Afterlife, is
People are so
terrifying.
cruel to each other, unnecessarily being rude.
Brood. Well, we live in a gravitational world of negative and positive, right? All of that stuff. And here's what's mind-bending. I mean, the very first person I filmed for the film Flipside, doing a hypnotherapy session, she recalled being in the Holocaust and dying in Auschwitz. And when I filmed that, I thought, oh my gosh, she must be making this up just for the camera because it's so dramatic what she's saying.
So
But
you
then
have been skeptic too.
but I thought, where am I? What is this? But then she went back with her guide who helped her go back to her council, and she met these wise beings, and she said to them, why did I choose such a difficult lifetime? And then she said, oh, this is going to be hard to explain, but they're showing me that it was harder to choose to play the role of a perpetrator than a victim in this lifetime, because I learned all these lessons in loyalty and trust and love and all those details, whereas the perpetrators will suffer over many lifetimes for the events that they had done. They volunteered to play that role, and it got out of hand. That's what she said. When I heard that, my head like popped up from the camera, like, what am I listening? What is this? And that has consistently been reported. Even in the most difficult, problematic ideas, people report they agreed to participate. And sometimes it's to teach a lesson in negativity to the person who's committing the crime. Because when you get to the life review, they experience all the negativity they've done firsthand. They feel the things that they did to the victim, they feel them. And in front of all of their peers, in front of their counsel, they experience all of that negativity firsthand. It's a very difficult lesson, as you can imagine. But they also show you good things you've done.
I kind of get this impression that the Western society is kind of getting the idea of karma. That person did something wrong and something bad happened to him. Not necessarily always, but they say that. The karma hits you.
I was just going to say, and I don't know if, I don't want to step in any toes, but the word karma in Sanskrit actually means action or energy, which doesn't mean sin or baggage.
No.
So in essence, when people discuss, like, I'm going to come back, and they say to their counsel, I'm going to conquer addiction. And the counsel can say, you know what, you said that last time, and we don't trust you. We don't think that's a good idea for you. You can opt out. They can bring you a presentation, and they can say, look, we want you to go back, and you're going to be an addict, and you're going to overcome this. And you can say, I can't handle that again right now. I don't want to do it. Let somebody else do it. You can opt out or defer. Eventually, you'll have to get to there. But because of all the players in the stage are friends of yours, people who've helped you before, you say, all right, I'll try it. And so then you try it. So karma is action or energy that you choose to take on. I'll wear that hat again. I'll do but this time I'll succeed. And not everybody does, because if you think about what happens at the end of a play, everyone's alive. When the movie's done on the set, the actors, they shoot each other and then they get up, they change their costumes, and then they go home. And that's pretty much what people report. We leave this stage and we go home where we started from. We know people are suffering and our loved ones are on stage, and we try to help as best we can. We can't interfere. We can't change what they're going to do. I mean, they might ask us to. We can't give them lottery numbers because it'll ruin their life, the thing that they plan to do. So it's this idea of, I think in the West, and I agree with you, of course, but I did look this up. In terms of reincarnation, the Cathars, which were Christians who believed in reincarnation, and the church hated them so much they killed them all so that they would go to the next lifetime. Those are all in France. People have the Native Americans of the U.S. tribes. The reincarnation is part of their journey, and so there's many philosophical ideas, but it really comes down to, what's the data say? And the data says that people can recall previous lifetimes, and you can do it with great clarity. And it's not only, look, if you spend all day asking about what did I do in my previous lifetime, you're not going to live your life. You just have to trust everything's going to be okay. However, in my case, there have been 3 places on the planet where the plane landed and I felt like I was home. One was in Rome. And, 40 years later, I did a past life regression and saw a lifetime there. One was in Tibet, where I was in Lhasa on the runway. And I was like, oh, my gosh, how did I get back here? And the third was in Mumbai, runway number 7, where there's a million people who live out at the airport. And so as the plane lands, you're looking right, across this crowd of people. But I felt like I was home. And it wasn't until years later that I had that past life memory of being a priest in Kerala and experiencing what that was like. What a beautiful, beautiful place India is. I tell people, if you want to experience the planet, if the entire country, you can experience so much going from Kerala to
Correct.
Kashmir. It's an uncanny, the places.
If you like, I want to invite you to come to the eastern side. There is a place called Assam, the state of Assam.
I'd love to. I'm
There
a
is
fan of the
Guwahati.
tea. I love the tea. Yeah, very much. I do. A big fan. No, of course, and I haven't been to Rajasthan, which, and I was going to, and then 9/11 happened, and that's it. Like I say, I really haven't been back since I think 2000. I went to Kailash, so I started off in Juhu making that movie, Bollywood Bride, and then I got an email from Robert Thurman saying if you can be in Kathmandu on Tuesday, you can join our trip around Mount Kailash. And so I said to the crew, I got to go. Sorry, guys. I was shooting second unit.
And why I am telling you about Guwahati, going to Guwahati, like there is a temple there, the Kamakhya,
Great.
Sakti, the
I think
divine feminine Sakti, that temple, and that place is very powerful. In terms of, you heard about Tantra?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I think one of your viewers is going to say, we need Rich Martini to come over here and talk to us, and they're going to send me a ticket. That's all I need.
I'm just asking you to consider it if you ever get the time.
In a heartbeat. And I could tell you my friend Sanjay Saxena, who leads tours around Tibet, his mother lived in Delhi, and they invited me to come and stay. And I stayed in Delhi at their house. And so that was an unusual experience as well. I love...
Richard, I mean, you have that acumen in that kind of philosophy. If I ask you that how you get that, how that initiated, I mean, is there any particular person, individual, or any philosophical, study you did that you may think like it's contributed to that?
Absolutely. And I think for me, it was Robert Thurman, because, I took his class not knowing anything about Buddhism. And he taught meditations. And so there's 4 meditations that I learned from him on our trips. We would go somewhere and he'd get the whole class together and say, okay, we're going to do the Jewel Tree of Tibet meditation, which he wrote a book. He also, I don't know if you're familiar with Tonglen, Tonglen, Tonglen meditation. Richard Davidson, professor at the University of Wisconsin, has proven that Tonglen can cure or alleviate symptoms of depression. And that's the science. And he's the guy who created the term mindfulness. So that's a very valuable meditation to understand and learn. And it's a healing one. There's also the vase meditation for people familiar with that. And then the breath meditation. All 4 of those, I think, are like doing mental push-ups of really getting your arms strong. And so if you can meditate, if you can do 10 minutes a day, maybe transcendental meditation, however you can do that, you're helping your mind clear out all that clutter, and then you can invite people to come and talk to you. And I would say I learned this from Michael Newton. He came to us in a restaurant after he passed, and Jennifer Schaefer said to me, your friend Morton is here. And I was like, Morton, who's that? She's like, the guy you made a documentary about. I said, oh, you mean Michael Newton? Like if she was going to make it up, you'd think she'd get the name right. And she went, yeah. And I said, well, look, Michael, I'm going on a talk show, and tell me, what's the 3 way to do it, to talk to somebody? And he said, very simple, say their name. Number 1, say their name. Brokima. Number 2, ask them questions. Okay? And I said, well, wait a minute. How do you tell if it's accurate or not, or if you're making it up? He said, when they answer the question before you can ask it, you'll know you've made a connection. Now, I was asking you a question about something else, if you look at the tape, and you answered, she's showing me a mountain. She answered a question I hadn't asked. Like, what were you surprised? The next question was going to be, what were you surprised to see? So I don't know if that would have been her answer, but she popped the mountain in there before we could even ask her a question, you see? So that's a way for anybody can do that. And that's why I work with 3 different methods. So I've got hypnotherapy to back me up, I've got meditation to back me up, or a medium. And then I have multiple mediums. So I can go to each medium and say,
So
what does this
anybody
mean?
can be a medium, or
Absolutely, because listen, the science shows that we have filters on the brain that block awareness. Dr. Grayson's book, After, highly recommended, near-death experiences, page 125, he talks about filters on the brain that block awareness. But we can bypass those filters during the near-death experience and out-of-body experience using hallucinogens, also in vivid dreams, but also during meditation, during talking to a medium whose filters are off, they're not quite there, or through a guided meditation, just like we did. Picture yourself in a boat on a river. If you can do that, and you said, she had visited you before, that shows that your filters are not completely blocking you. So you just focus on the moment you saw them.
I forced myself to be that kind of a boat there.
That's
But
great.
as
But you
always,
did.
I always stand at the shore.
Well, I can say this. When you saw her in a dream, and what I tell people to do is go to the moment in the dream where they were the most clear. Usually it's before anything is said. You see them and you're like, oh my gosh. And you freeze that like a photograph. It's like you take a picture of it and it's frozen, so you don't have to worry about they're going to disappear. And then you turn it into a hologram so you can walk through the space. They're frozen, and you go right up to them, and then you can sort of, put your hands on them, and you can ask them a question. And then you can say, put the answer in my mind. How are you doing? How am I doing? What are the lottery numbers this weekend? I always ask, and they always laugh. I always get a laugh whenever I ask for lottery numbers. They always, ha, ha, ha. But I'm just saying that's a method, okay? It's just a method. And the more you do it, the more you allow it's possible, the more things will happen to you that you just never thought, like, oh my gosh, that's weird. I didn't know that song would come on the radio when I drove by that house. And if you ask them, like, how'd you do that? They go, well, it's not really hard because over here, we're outside of time. It's not hard for us to figure out how to put a song on when you drive by the house that, we used to live in. That's what you do. And I want to tell you my latest book.
I kind of, you encourages me kind of.
I hope so.
By your humbleness. I mean,
so if
if you like, can we do a part 2? I mean, there are a few more questions I need to ask you, but it's getting too long.
No, I understand, but I just want to tell your audience, Amelia Earhart started showing up in my work about 20 years ago. And the name of the book is She Was Never Lost, the Amelia Earhart saga. And so I have done
here in my questions, what happened?
There you go. Earhart? Well, I'll tell you, I've been to Saipan, where she was incarcerated for quite a few years, at least 7 years. And I interviewed U.S. Marines who found her plane there on Saipan in June of 1944. I've interviewed a whole number of people, eyewitnesses who saw her there. And I've also included mediums, including Jennifer Schaefer, who's had quite a few unusual conversations with her. They're all in the book. And the point is, if you don't believe that she was there, you can ask her directly for questions about what it was like there. Or if you don't believe she knew what it was like there, you can actually look at the forensic research that shows, the Marines found her plane there. This whole idea of looking for her is a misnomer. It's a little bit like saying, well, there's no such thing as whatever, but I'm sorry, she was never lost. Japanese knew where she was. She knew where she was. The U.S. knew where she was. So it's worth taking a look at. Put it that way.
So with your permission, may I, tell the viewers that stay tuned for part 2, maybe if you...
Stay tuned for part 2. Why part 2? Why not 10 parts?
Of course. I am very much interested. Like I prepared some questions and I am very interested in maybe in next part we will discuss about it. Okay. Like the human connection. You studied about the frequencies among us. when we
Yeah.
interact with people? Is it frequencies? Is it hormones? Like I heard somewhere that people react what kind of hormones they most profoundly secrete at the specific moment, like cortisols,
Well, so
and the happy hormones.
this really comes down to the science.
Hmm.
Is
But there is
consciousness?
also frequencies studied.
I did
You know,
mention it,
you are,
but let me just say, is consciousness confined to the brain? And
yes.
if you believe that to be the case, then you will always try to have some logical cortisol reason for things to occur, if that's what you believe. However, the science, University of Virginia, DOPS Lab, Department of Perceptual Studies, has been showing for 4 decades that consciousness is not confined to the brain. So therefore, so then you think, what does the
That's what
brain?
I want you to debunk. Actually.
Well, and what? So then you're examining what is the mind? What is the mind retaining? And the point is what I've learned from so much of this is, and to put it in layman's terms, we exist before the play begins. While the play is on stage, only a portion of who we are is on stage. But that actor that is playing us is dumbed down because they have filters on the brain that don't, so they can experience the play firsthand. They're not aware that we're out in the audience, which is fine. And that's the way it's been. And that's how people can navigate. However, some of the people on stage are aware. Children up to the age of 8, they don't have filters, a lot of them. And people who are about to pass away, elderly, lose the filters. They see people that in the audience waiting for them. And we just go, oh, it's Grandpa, he's got Alzheimer's. Well, Grandpa's saying Grandma's waiting for him because she's there. He can see her. And we deny people's reality by doing this thing of pretending that consciousness is confined to the brain. So in essence, it's like the opposite. Somebody has to prove to me that we die. They have to prove that consciousness ends. They have to prove that. Because my experience is that neither one of those are true. Because I've talked to thousands of people. I've got thousands of hours of footage of people talking to their mother, their father, their uncle, or learning new information from them.
And there is
Things that they
also
couldn't
that
make
thing
up.
about maybe most important to the current generation, the young adults, the adults also, like you feel your life miserable, like someone you want to be with and can't be. Sometimes happen that the situation is like that, like it's a conspiracy, not divine conspiracy. I
No,
must
I
tell you.
understand.
It's
It's
kind of
a
and the
love
environment
conspiracy.
that make us apart, and that there is a connection. And can you manifest that this
Well,
kind of things?
I can tell you that I've heard it from my own.
Richard, can we do that on part 2 maybe, because it's
Yeah,
getting
we
to.
can, sure. And I can tell you that some of the people on Quora who write to me from India, they ask that question. How can I get this person to love me when they're not interested in me? And I do. We'll talk about it, but I do like
We
to read.
hope you have all the good intentions,
Well,
and
there's
you
also
know
this
that.
thing of, did you plan it for this play? Is the reason you're in love with that person because you did a play with them before? Maybe you recognize them. And maybe the agreement was, you know what, this time you go off and do something else. We'll meet, but I'm not going to be with you. Or we'll be in love for a while, we'll divorce, and then you're going to go off and do something else. That's an agreement you made before the play began. It's hard for people to wrap their minds around the idea that everything is going to be okay. That's what I hear consistently. And people don't take it seriously. Everything is going to be okay. That it will all make sense eventually. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Namaste.
Cheers.